All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating philosophy, a whole new way of seeing the world. And we're going to do it through the story of a man who basically became a professional noticer. And it all kicks off with a feeling I think we can all relate to. You know this feeling, right? Monday, well, it's the start. It's terrible. Wednesday, that's hump day. You're almost there. But Tuesday, Tuesday is just there. It's the overlooked middle child of the week, totally lacking its own story. And that feeling of being completely overlooked is the perfect starting point for the real problem we're talking about today, our own inattention.
So why is it that things like Tuesdays just kind of fade into the wallpaper of our lives? Well, it's because we've all sort of made this unspoken deal to ignore certain things, to pretend they're not really there, just so we can get through our day. But what happens when you meet someone who just can't sign that deal?
And that's where we meet our guide for this journey, a guy named Gerald Foss. His wife once told him, "Gerald, your problem is that you notice things." So what does he do? He goes and founds an entire organization dedicated to doing just that.
Welcome to the Bureau of Overlooked Phenomena. And its mission is actually pretty simple: to pay careful attention to all the things that are real and present in our world, but are being collectively, not noticed. And at the heart of this whole operation is one single, really powerful idea.
This is it. This is the core philosophy. They call it genuine attention. And look, it's not about concentrating really hard or staring at something. It's actually a more relaxed, a more receptive way of seeing. It means that instead of immediately asking, what can this do for me, or what's its purpose, you take a step back and you ask, what is this thing just on its own terms?
And this, I think, is just brilliant. This is how the Bureau organizes reality itself. It's their filing system. You've got all these great categories, but the real kicker, the biggest file, the one with the most stuff in it by far, is number 5. Things that turned out to be something else entirely, which kind of suggests that our first take on things is almost always wrong. So, what does this actually look like in practice? What does this genuine attention actually uncover? Well, let's dive into a few strange and wonderful case studies from the Bureau's files, and you'll see what happens when we really, truly start to look.
So this first case started when Gerald Foss was just watching some pretty ordinary city pigeons on a ledge. But after 3 years of just watching, he came to a startling conclusion. They weren't just randomly picking up junk, they were organizing it.
He realized that these pigeons had divided their little ledge into specific zones based on what the material was. Okay, so you had a section for bread products, that makes sense. A section for seeds, yep. Another for paper scraps. But then, there was this weird little anomaly, a single bright pink strawberry-shaped eraser, and it had its very own exclusive section.
For almost 2 full years, this eraser just sat there, in its own category. The pigeons seemed to be treating it with, as Gerald put it, consistent deference. Then one afternoon, a pigeon he designated P7 walked up, kind of looked at it for a while, and then just nudged it 2 inches to the left, moving it officially into the paper section. After 2 years of what you can only really call deliberation, the case was closed.
And this quote just captures the whole thing perfectly, right? It's so funny because it's so serious. It takes this 2-year pigeon intellectual struggle completely at face value, because from the pigeon's point of view, the eraser was genuinely difficult. And this is the kind of amazing comedic truth that genuine attention can reveal.
The Bureau also documented Case 117. It was just a regular line, a queue for licenses. But over time, it spontaneously developed its own little social structure. It had an unofficial queue correspondent who would report back on wait times. It had a rule that benches were considered part of the line. It even had a norm where people would share their umbrellas. It was basically a temporary society that popped up every week, born out of the shared misery of waiting.
And then there's maybe the most profound discovery of all. Late one Tuesday night, of course, Gerald noticed a city park wasn't just passively reflecting the moonlight. No, the park was doing something with the light. It was creating this stunningly beautiful display, a display of what he called beauty that is not for anyone, because there was no one there to see it. It was just for itself.
So how did he know? How could he tell the difference? Well, this was his key insight. He realized there's a difference between passive, reflected light, which has an angle, and purposive, made light, which has direction. The light was moving across the grass with a clear purpose that physics alone couldn't account for. It was like the park itself was behaving intentionally.
So all these cases, they're not just quirky little stories. They start to build a kind of framework that we can all actually use. This isn't just about watching pigeons in parks. It's really about learning how to retune our own perception of the world around us.
Okay, so if you want to try this, the first thing you have to understand is this invisible mechanism we all have running in the background. It's called the attentional filter. Think of it like a bouncer for your brain. It's constantly screening out information based on what society has decided isn't important. And that's useful. It helps us function. But the problem is, it also screens out what might be profoundly interesting. And that brings us to this really crucial distinction. On the one hand, there's knowing about something, collecting facts, reading articles, getting the data. And then there's truly knowing it, which only comes from direct, sustained, genuine attention. It's the difference between reading the instruction manual for a bike and actually getting on the bike and feeling it for yourself.
In the ultimate model for this kind of knowing, the case that really brought it all home for the Bureau, it wasn't some complex system. It was a 6-year-old child, just sitting on the pavement, completely absorbed in watching a beetle.
Her simple, pure attention provided this perfect 3-step method that they later named the Beetle Protocol. Step 1, watch without messing with it. Step 2, keep it safe while you watch. She was using a little stick to gently guide it away from the road. And step 3, the most important one, watch it for one reason and one reason only, because it's interesting. That's it. That's the whole practice.
So what does all this mean for us? Why does paying attention to pigeons and cues and beetles actually matter in our own lives? Well, when Gerald finally approached the little girl, she just looked up at him and said this. With the simple, devastating honesty that only a kid can have, she summarized the entire premise of the Bureau's 11 years of work. Most of us, most of the time, we're just not watching.
And so that leaves us with a really provocative question to think about in our own lives. What have you agreed not to notice? What's your Tuesday? What's that thing that is present and real right in front of you that you've just implicitly agreed to ignore so you can get on with your day?
In the end, this whole philosophy doesn't leave us with some complex theory or a 7-point plan. It leaves us with a simple, powerful, and honestly inspiring instruction. Don't just know about the world. Go know it. Go find your beetle. Go watch something.